The return to the Blaugrana temple, to the Camp Nou, the place where the most glorious nights in our history were forged, was supposed to be imminent. Everything was ready. The freshly laid pitch, the stands gleaming once more in the blue and garnet colors, the sound system tested, 27,000 seats ready to vibrate under the roars of the fans. Hansi Flick already had it in mind. The plan was to host Real Sociedad at home, to reopen the stadium, even in a first phase, to reclaim that broken communion after 2 long years at Montjuic. And yet, bam! Here comes the bureaucratic obstacle, the invisible blockage that we will call by its true name today: sabotage disguised as administrative rigor. If you, too, believe that Barça deserves to come home, that the Barcelona City Council must stop putting sticks in the wheels, subscribe now and join this cool community that never stays silent. Like, share this video, and make our voice heard. Yes, cool brothers, because the Barcelona City Council has decided to refuse the initial occupancy license for the Spotify Camp Nou. The argument: alleged security failures still present, inadequate evacuation routes, non-compliant barrier heights, confusing signage, and some unfinished stair sections. And what is the result of this decision? Barça is once again exiled to Montjuic. Our home remains closed, silent, waiting for a signature that never comes. The contrast is so brutal it seems scripted. In the morning, Joan Laporta appears before the media and repeats that the stadium is ready, that all documents have been submitted, that security is certified. Elena Fort insists on the same point. The fact that the stadium is not fully completed does not mean it is unsafe. And a few hours later, the hammer blow: the City Council says no. With reports that do indeed mention security, but which everyone admits are correctable flaws within days. So, what's really going on here? Is the safety of thousands of Kules truly at stake, or are we victims of excessive administrative zeal that smells more like politics than prevention? Let's be serious. Who can believe that Laporta, the board, and Hansi Flick would risk allowing fans into a stadium if there were real danger? What we have here is another story, a power struggle between the club and the City Council, where the only hostages are us, the supporters. Because Barça has fulfilled its obligations, Barça has pushed for a phased reopening. Barça has undergone the strictest control ever seen for a sports facility in Catalonia. And meanwhile, the municipal administration responds with half measures. We won't take a minute longer than necessary. But there have already been too many minutes. The fallout from this mess is even more insulting. The match against Real Sociedad will not be played at the Camp Nou, but at Montjuic, a stadium that was supposed to be just a temporary stopgap and now seems doomed to last. And not just that match. PSG, the Champions League, games where the home advantage could make the difference, will also take place in that cold, soulless mountain, where the echo will never replace the roar of the Camp Nou. Cool, this is called sabotage. Not sabotage of the sewers or mysteries, but bureaucratic, political, administrative sabotage, delaying the inevitable, Barca's return home. Because the stadium is there, imposing, waiting for its people. But the City Council prefers to keep talking about crooked barriers, as if our lives depended on it. And as a Kuhl, I won't stay silent. This scenario is a cry against the paralysis of those who should be collaborating to return to us what we should never have lost. Our Camp Nou. What we experienced on September 23, 2025, will go down in history as a day of Kuhl frustration. From the early hours of the morning, the atmosphere was optimistic. The pitch gleamed at Les Courts. Elena Fort toured the stadium with journalists. Laporta spoke words that seemed to announce an imminent reopening. The match against Real Sociedad was being talked about as the first of the new Spotify Camp Nou era. Everything seemed to be falling into place. The documents, reports, and certificates had been submitted. Municipal technicians were gathered to give the green light. But just after, around 5 p.m., the cold shower arrived. The City Council refused the initial occupancy license. The explanation: security failures detected during technical inspections, metal valleys obstructing evacuation routes, barriers not meeting the required height, confusing signage, unfinished stairs, blocked access for emergency vehicles. That's what they said. The immediate result? Barça had to confirm that the clash against Real Sociedad would be played at Montjuic, and along the way, that the Champions League match against PSG would also be there. In other words, the Camp Nou seemed ready in the eyes of the fans. The club said it was, but politically, it remained under lock and key. This head-on clash between Barca's narrative and the city council's position outlines the sabotage scenario. Because we're not talking about a dangerous stadium, we're talking about minor technical differences that the city council has decided to turn into an excuse to delay the reopening. Many people are wondering, how is it possible that a brand new, pristine stadium cannot open just because of a license? The answer is yes, because the initial occupancy license is the key document that grants legal authorization for the public to enter a facility. Without it, it doesn't matter if the pitch is perfect or if new seats have been installed. The Camp Nou cannot be officially used, and to obtain it, the City Council demands two things: the final certificate of the work and that the security reports be corrected. Barca submitted the CFO, but municipal technicians alleged that there were still failures preventing the green light. The club responded logically: the license can be granted conditionally, meaning recognizing that the stadium is safe and noting the remaining points to be completed. This is done in many projects, but here, the City Council refuses, and that's where the shock lies. Barca is calling for pragmatism to return home, and the municipal council is hiding behind the literalness of the reports. The result? Outright sabotage, because never in the recent history of a stadium of this magnitude have so many obstacles been placed in the way of a partial opening. The inspection reports leaked to the press, and their conclusions outraged the supporters, because they did not speak of a dangerous stadium, but of easily correctable aspects: metal barriers blocking passage in evacuation routes, barriers whose height does not meet the centimeters required by regulations, stairs with unfinished sections or without handrails, poorly placed or confusing exit signs, concrete barriers obstructing emergency access. No one denies that these are issues to be corrected, but they prevent the stadium from hosting 27,000 people in areas that are already completed. Barca says no, that these are flaws that can be fixed in a few days, and that the partial opening is perfectly viable. The City Council, on the other hand, has chosen to say that, when it comes to safety, we do not negotiate. And what does it do in the meantime? It punishes the supporters by forcing them to stay at Montjuic. Even though everyone knows that at Montjuic, access and evacuation are not exactly model either. From the Blaugrana management, the thesis of an immediate return has been defended tooth and nail. Elena Fort explained it clearly: the fact that the stadium is not finished does not mean it is not safe. There was talk of 70,000 square meters already completed, certification submitted, and up-to-date documentation. LAPORTA was even more categorical: the ball is in the City Council's court. In other words, the club had done everything, and now the only thing missing was the City Council signature, a signature that never arrived. The anger of the Cules has grown because in the morning, it was suggested that the license could arrive even with some details pending, but in the afternoon, it was decided to raise the requirements, turning hope into frustration in a matter of hours. And in the middle of it all, the supporters are being used as bargaining chips in an institutional dispute. We must not be naive. Safety is vital. No one wants to risk the lives of spectators. But what generates indignation is the double standard, because many of the reported flaws were fixable and did not prevent opening with guarantees. The fire chief, Sebastian Maseg, spoke of deficiencies in evacuation routes. Fine. But do these barriers or railings really justify closing an entire stadium when part of it is already completed? This is where the Cule perspective comes in. The City Council is using the flag of safety as an excuse to maintain political control and demonstrate technical rigor. But behind this, there is something clear: an unnecessary stretching of deadlines, turning the return to the Camp Nou into an endless soap opera. The City Council's decision does not only have bureaucratic consequences, it has serious repercussions. Barca loses revenue from ticketing, hospitality, and in-stadium merchandising. It loses atmosphere, it loses support, because at Montjuic, it will never be the same. The stadium empties, access is uncomfortable, and the aura disappears. On the sporting front, Hansi Flick is preparing key matches without the breath of 90,000 Cules. Against Real Sociedad, against PSG in the Champions League, the home advantage could have made the difference, and now these matches are being played in a borrowed stadium. The economy also weighs heavily. The debt of Spotify Barca needs revenue, but every match without the Camp Nou means lost money. And in the meantime, supporters feel their patience wearing thin. If you also think that this delay is costing us points, money, and the Cule soul, support this video with a like and a subscription. Let it be clear, Cules do not accept this administrative sabotage. The Spotify Barca is much more than an urban project. It is the club's big future move, the strategic shift that was supposed to bring us back to the global forefront. It's not just steel, glass, and concrete. It's the bet of an entire Barcelona fanbase to have the most modern stadium in Europe. But today, instead of being a symbol of progress, it has turned into an uneven battleground between cool hope and city council bureaucracy. When LAPORTA talked about phases, he painted an exciting and orderly narrative. First, a partial return of the public with 27,000 seats open in the Tribuna and GOL Sud. Then, a staggered schedule of progressive reopening until the year of completion, when the entire stadium would be finished, gleaming, covered, and transformed into the technological giant we were sold in future virtual reality images. This timeline had a purpose, not to sever the umbilical cord between Barça and its home. Because, under construction or not, the club envisioned that at least one sector of the temple should open to keep the flame of the Camp Nou alive. However, in practice, instead of seeing collaborative phases, we see systematic blockages. The city council has decided not to grant even the first phase, the one that involved 27,000 privileged fans being able to feel the roar at Les Courts again, even if the rest of the stadium was still covered in cranes and nets. This decision breaks the very spirit of the plan, because Barça never proposed using a dangerous stadium, but rather making use of the completed areas while the others were being finalized. And this is where the monumental question of the roof comes in. The new retractable and technological roof, this colossal engineering masterpiece that was supposed to be the jewel of the renovation, is already experiencing notable delays. What was planned for 2026 has been pushed back, as reported by several media outlets, to 2027. A whole extra year, a delay that cannot be disguised.
Why?
Because the roof is a challenge with thousands of tons of suspended steel, state-of-the-art sound and lighting systems, and connections with a new architectural facade. It is logical that complications arise, but what hurts, what outrages, is that while we discuss future delays, what is already ready today is being blocked. Barça has pressured the city council with an absolutely coherent argument. At least we know how to use the completed part. But the response was a slammed door, and that door weighs heavily because while we discuss whether the big roof will be ready in 2026 or 2027, supporters continue to be unable to set foot in a stadium that has been inactive for 2 years as the main venue. What was supposed to be a narrative of progressive phases has turned into a frozen timeline. The illusion of the members, who were already dreaming of a gradual return, has faded, and they must endure an exile that is creating financial and emotional fractures. And this has a cost that goes beyond bricks. The construction of Spotify Barça was supposed to be the symbol of unity between the club and the city. Instead, today it is proof that when a cool project depends too much on politics, it ends up stuck in bureaucratic clause. Let's not fool ourselves, cool. Building a new stadium is never simple, but we have never seen so much insistence on breaking what was already certified as safe. What should be the club's engine toward the future, thanks to phased planning, is now perceived as an endless blockade, where the only thing advancing is the schedule of delays. And in the meantime, Barça is paying the bills. Young players like LAMINE YAMAL are wearing themselves out in borrowed stadiums, and the stands dream of a return that seems endlessly postponed, like a mockery. The scandal would not be complete if we did not talk about the double standard, because when we say that Barça is being treated differently, it is not victimhood, it is a pure observation.